My name's Annie, and this is how my story starts. My mom brewed tea to say sorry for forgetting my birthday again. I thanked her, then traded cups with my sister Brooke, the one who scored a trip to Paris. 2 sips in, she began coughing violently. Mom stared at me. I simply sipped my water. My 32nd birthday landed on March 15th this year, and just like clockwork, absolutely no one remembered. Not a single text, not a call, not even a half-hearted Facebook post from some cousin I met twice. My phone just sat there, silent, mocking me on my desk at work while I spent 8 hours processing insurance claims. Around noon, Jennifer from accounting, bless her heart, stopped by my cubicle with homemade cupcakes for her son's bake sale. She had no idea what day it was, and honestly, how could she? I never told anyone. Want one, Annie? She asked, putting the box down. I just smiled, grabbed a cupcake, and pretended everything was perfectly fine. That subway ride home felt like an eternity. Every ad seemed to scream at me. Happy families, romantic dinners, milestone moments captured in perfect lighting. I watched my reflection in the darkened window, barely recognizing the woman staring back. When had I become so invisible? My apartment, a 1-bedroom rental I'd been telling myself was temporary for 5 years, welcomed me with its usual emptiness. I microwaved some sad leftovers and, of course, scrolled through social media, watching everyone else's perfectly curated lives unfold. And that's when I saw it. My sister, Brooke, had posted 17 photos from Paris. The Eiffel Tower at sunset, macarons artfully arranged on vintage china, her laughing in a beret that probably cost more than my monthly groceries. The caption? Best birthday trip ever. Thanks, Mom and Dad, for making my 27th so special. My younger sister got a trip to Paris for her 27th. Me? For my 32nd, I got silence. And a lukewarm cupcake. Brooke, you see, has always been the golden child. Blonde where I'm brunette, bubbly where I'm reserved. She's the kind of daughter who calls home twice a week and genuinely enjoys family dinners. She works in marketing for some trendy startup, the kind of job that sounds impressive but no one actually understands. Her Instagram is filled with motivational quotes over pictures of her morning coffee, and she has, get this, 4,000 followers. Me? I'm an insurance claims processor. I wear business casual to a beige office and spend my days telling people their water damage isn't covered. The comparison, as my mother constantly reminds me, isn't subtle. My phone finally buzzed around 9 p.m. It was Mom. Sweetie, I just realized what day it is. I'm so sorry. Things have been so hectic with organizing Brooke's trip and Dad's retirement party planning. Can you come over tomorrow? I'll make it up to you. Not happy birthday. Just an acknowledgement that she'd forgotten, sandwiched between excuses about Brooke and Dad. Of course. Sure, Mom. Wonderful. She followed up, come around too, Annie. I'll make your favorite tea. We'll have a nice chat. Just us girls. Just us girls, she said. As if we were close. As if she hadn't forgotten my birthday for the 3rd year running, while throwing Brooke an elaborate surprise party for her 25th with a rented venue and a live band. I showed up at my parents' house the next afternoon. The place was exactly as always, manicured lawn, white picket fence, that perfect suburban movie set vibe where you just know there are secrets brewing. Ours weren't dramatic, just the slow, steady erasure of one daughter in favor of another. Mom answered the door, wearing an apron covered in embroidered flowers. There's my girl. Come in, Annie, come in. The kitchen smelled of cinnamon and something else, something slightly bitter underneath. She'd set out the good china, 2 delicate cups with painted roses, steam rising from a teapot between them. I made your favorite chamomile with honey, she chirped, pouring the golden liquid. I really am so sorry about yesterday, Annie. You know how scattered I get. It's fine, the words came out automatically. How many times had I said them over the years? It's fine that you missed my college graduation because Brooke had a dance recital. It's fine that you forgot to pick me up from the airport because Brooke needed help moving. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I'm glad you understand, Mom said, taking a careful sip of her tea. You've always been so mature about these things. Not like your sister. She'd throw a fit if I forgot something important. Right, because Brooke's feelings mattered enough to avoid forgetting in the first place. Mom settled into her chair. So, Annie, tell me, how's work? Still doing that insurance thing. Claims processing. Yes, that's nice. Stable. Not exciting like Brooke's job, but stable is good. She took another sip, then paused. Actually, speaking of Brooke, she's coming over soon. She just got back from Paris last night and has so many stories. I thought it would be nice for the three of us to catch up. Of course. My belated birthday acknowledgement wasn't even about me. It was just a convenient time slot before Brooke's grand entrance. The front door opened before I could respond. Mom, I'm here. Brooke swept into the kitchen like a perfume commercial, all flowing scarves and expensive sunglasses pushed up on her head. She stopped short when she saw me. Oh, hey, Annie. Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Didn't know you'd be here. Birthday tea, I said, flatly. Right, she mumbled, dropping her designer bag on the counter. Do you have any of that special tea left? The one that helps with bloating? Paris food was amazing, but so rich. Mom jumped up immediately. Of course, honey. Annie, give me just a moment to make Brooke's tea. I watched my mother bustle around, pulling out a different tea tin, heating more water, fussing over the temperature. She prepared Brooke's tea with a kind of meticulous attention she'd never once given mine. Each step measured and careful. Here you go, sweetheart, Mom cooed, placing the pristine white cup in front of Brooke. This should help. Let it steep for exactly 4 minutes. Brooke sat down across from me, already pulling out her phone. Want to see pictures, Annie? I got the most incredible shots at Versailles. Sure, I lied. And she launched into a detailed account of every meal, every museum, every boutique. Mom hung on every word, asking questions, gasping at the right moments, living vicariously through her favorite daughter's adventures. I might as well have been furniture. The kitchen felt smaller with the three of us, cramped, suffocating. I need to use the bathroom, I announced, standing abruptly. Neither of them even noticed me leave. The bathroom sat at the end of the hallway, past family photos where Brooke smiled from every frame, while I appeared as an afterthought, perpetually blurred in the background. I locked the door and stared at myself in the mirror. 32 years old and still begging for scraps of attention from a woman who would never, ever see me. Something inside me cracked. I'd spent my entire life being understanding, being mature, being fine with being forgotten. What had it gotten me? An empty apartment, a forgettable job, and a family who wouldn't notice if I disappeared tomorrow. The anger felt foreign and familiar all at once, like a language I'd forgotten how to speak. It burned in my chest, demanding acknowledgement, demanding action. When I returned to the kitchen, both cups were still sitting on the table. Mom was showing Brooke something on her iPad, probably more retirement party plans. My tea had cooled to room temperature. Brooke's special bloating tea sat there, steaming in its pristine white cup. I looked at the cups, at my mother who'd forgotten my birthday to organize my sister's vacation, at Brooke, who'd never had to beg for attention a day in her life. The thought came quickly, almost without conscious decision. I picked up my cold cup with my left hand, stepped toward the table, and reached for Brooke's tea with my right. Oh, you're back, Mom said, glancing up. Your tea must be cold by now, Annie. Want me to reheat it? Actually, I said, my voice surprisingly even. Could I try Brooke's? The bloating tea? I've been having stomach issues lately. Mom frowned. I don't think it's fine. Brooke interrupted, not even looking up from the iPad. I haven't touched it yet. Take it, Annie. Perfect. Perfect. I set my cold chamomile down in front of Brooke and lifted her cup to my lips. The smell hit me first. Chamomile like mine, but with something sharper underneath. Artificial sweetener, maybe, or some herbal supplement. Whatever special ingredient Mom had added for her precious daughter. Thanks, I said, and took a long, deliberate sip. Brooke, completely oblivious, absently reached for what she thought was her tea and drink. The change happened fast. Her eyes widened first, then her throat constricted. She gasped, clutched at her neck, and started coughing, violent, racking coughs that shook her whole body. Brooke. Mom jumped up, panicking. What's wrong? Are you okay? My sister couldn't answer. She doubled over, coughing so hard I thought she might vomit. Her face turned red, then slightly purple. Tears streamed down her perfect makeup. Mom grabbed the cup from Brooke's hand and sniffed it. Her face went white. Then she looked at me in horror. I took another calm sip from my cup, Brooke's cup, and met her eyes steadily. The tea is delicious, Mom. Thank you. Understanding dawned across her face. Horror, then calculation, then something like pure fear. She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. You switched them, she whispered. I smiled and said nothing. Took another sip. Brooke's coughing subsided into painful gasps. What? What was in that? She wheezed. Mom's hands trembled. I put some laxatives in your tea, honey. You said you were bloated, so I thought just a little bit to help you feel better. Nothing dangerous, just laxatives. Brooke's voice came out hoarse. You gave me laxatives without telling me? Just a small amount. Mom insisted. To help with the Paris bloat. I thought I was helping. You poisoned me. Don't be dramatic, sweetheart. It's not poison. It's just, you knew, Brooke whispered, looking at me. You switched the cups on purpose. Did I? I kept my voice light, innocent. I asked if I could try Brooke's tea. She said yes. You heard her. But you knew what was in it. How would I know that? You said it was bloating tea. I assumed you meant peppermint or ginger. I set the cup down gently. Are you saying you put something else in my sister's tea? Mom, something potentially harmful without her knowledge or consent. The trap closed beautifully. Mom couldn't admit what she'd done without looking absolutely terrible. She couldn't blame me without confessing she'd drugged Brooke's drink. She couldn't escape the logic. She stood there, mouth opening and closing like a fish, while Brooke glared at her with growing rage. Mom, Brooke said slowly, dangerously. Did you seriously drug my tea? I was trying to help without asking me first? What if I'd gotten sick on the drive home? What if I had somewhere important to be? Brooke's voice rose. What is wrong with you? Honey, don't honey me. This is insane. Brooke grabbed her bag and headed for the door. I need to go home before whatever you gave me kicks in. Brooke, wait. But she was gone. The front door slammed behind her, the sound echoing through the house like a gunshot. Mom flinched, her carefully constructed world cracking at the seams. She turned to me with wild eyes. This is your fault, she said finally, her voice shaking. You provoked this entire situation, Annie. I leaned against the counter, still holding the cup of tea that had started everything. I drank tea. That's literally all I did. You manipulated. I asked for a sip of Brooke's tea because I said I had stomach issues. She agreed. You were standing right there. I set the cup down with exaggerated care. Unless you're suggesting I somehow made you put laxatives in her drink? Because that would be quite a feat of mind control. Mom's face cycled through shades of red. You're twisting everything. Am I? Let's walk through what actually happened, Mom. I lifted my hand and started counting off each point. You forgot my birthday to organize Brooke's Paris trip. You invited me over for apology tea that you barely paid attention to while fawning over Brooke's vacation photos. You made her special tea with undisclosed medication in it because she complained about being bloated. I asked if I could try it. She said yes. I drank it. She drank mine by mistake. I paused. Which part am I twisting? The intent. Mom snapped. You knew something was wrong with that tea. How? I spread my hands. You said it was bloating tea. Bloating tea is ginger, peppermint, fennel, normal herbal remedies. How was I supposed to magically divine that you put laxatives in it? She couldn't answer because there was no answer. Any explanation would require admitting what she'd done. I could see the calculations happening behind her eyes, weighing whether to double down or retreat. She chose retreat. I think you should leave, Annie. Gladly. I collected my coat, taking my time with each button. Not out of pettiness, but out of clarity. Oh, and Mom, I said lightly. Next time you want to drug someone's beverage, maybe tell them first. It's generally considered polite. And legal. Annie, don't you dare accuse me of, but I was already walking away. I walked past her without another glance, down the hallway lined with photos of Brooke's achievements. Brooke's high school graduation. Brooke's college acceptance. Brooke at various award ceremonies. Brooke smiling in perfect lighting, in perfect outfits, in perfectly posed moments deemed worth commemorating. There were a few photos of me scattered throughout, but they felt like afterthoughts. The lighting was wrong. The framing was off-center, like someone had remembered at the last second that they had 2 daughters instead of 1. My car sat in the driveway next to Mom's pristine SUV, with a proud mom of an honor student bumper sticker. The honor student, naturally, was Brooke. I'd made honor roll plenty of times. Nobody bought me a bumper sticker. The drive home should have felt triumphant. Instead, it felt hollow. I'd won something, sure, but what exactly? My sister was probably at home dealing with intestinal distress. My mother was angry and embarrassed. And me? Was I vindicated? Satisfied? Empowered? Mostly, I just felt tired. My apartment greeted me with its familiar emptiness. I dropped my coat on the chair, my keys on the counter, and stood in the middle of my living room wondering what people did after they'd just blown up their family relationships. Call a friend? I didn't really have those. Pour a drink? I'd never been much of a drinker. Scroll through social media and feel worse about my life? That seemed like the most realistic option. Instead, I pulled out my laptop and opened a document I'd started months ago but never finished. Reasons I'm unhappy sat at the top in bold letters, followed by a scattered list of complaints that had seemed too petty to articulate fully. Job, apartment, family, loneliness. The usual suspects. I added a new entry. I'm 32 years old, and I just tricked my sister into drinking laxative tea to get back at my mother for forgetting my birthday. Seeing it written out made it real in a way the actual event hadn't. This was who I'd become. Someone who swapped cups and watched chaos unfold without intervention. Someone who found satisfaction in her sister's discomfort and her mother's distress. The question was whether I felt bad about it. I examined my conscience carefully, like picking through a junk drawer, looking for something I wasn't sure existed. Guilt should be here somewhere, nestled between regret and remorse. But I couldn't find any of those things. What I found instead was a cold, clear recognition that I had been wronged for years and had finally pushed back. Was it proportional? Probably not. Was it fair? Debatable. Did it feel earned? Absolutely. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. This is Brooke using Dad's phone since you probably blocked me. We need to talk. I hadn't blocked her yet, but interesting that she assumed I had. I stared at the message before typing. Talk about what? About what you did today. I drank tea. You know what you did. Stop playing dumb. The hypocrisy was almost impressive. Brooke could forget my birthday without consequence. She could post 17 photos from her luxury vacation funded by our parents while I got nothing. She could enter every family gathering knowing she was the center of attention. But me drinking the wrong cup of tea? That was the crime requiring urgent discussion. I'm not playing anything. You offered me your tea. I drank it. Then you drank mine. If something was wrong with your tea, that's between you and Mom. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, reappeared. Mom said you switched them on purpose. Mom is trying to deflect from the fact that she drugged your beverage without your consent, which is actually illegal, by the way. I checked. I hadn't checked, but it sounded true enough. Why are you being like this, Annie? The question hung there, dripping with obliviousness. Why was I being like this? As if decades of being overlooked, forgotten, and treated as an afterthought could be summed up in a neat explanation she'd suddenly understand. Like what I typed, bitter, mean. This isn't like you. And there it was. The core assumption that had governed my entire life. This isn't like you. Translation: you're supposed to be quiet. You're supposed to be understanding. You're supposed to be fine with everything. You're supposed to be the easy daughter who doesn't make waves. You're supposed to be okay with being ignored. Maybe this is like me, Brooke, and you've never paid enough attention to notice. That's not fair. You went to Paris for your birthday. I got forgotten. Let's not talk about fair. The dots appeared again. That's not my fault. Did I say it was? You're clearly mad at me. I'm not mad at you, Brooke. I'm indifferent to you. There's a difference. It was a lie. Of course I was mad at her. Mad at her effortless charm, her Instagram perfect life, the way our parents' eyes lit up when she walked into a room. But admitting anger would give her power. Indifference was colder. Cleaner. She didn't respond again. I set my phone down and returned to my document, adding more entries. My sister thinks I'm being mean for finally standing up for myself. My mother thinks I'm the problem for exposing her behavior. My family built an entire dynamic around me accepting less, and they're angry. I stopped. Each sentence felt like lancing a wound. Painful, but necessary. Around 8, my stomach reminded me I hadn't eaten since breakfast. I ordered Chinese delivery and ate it straight from the containers while watching a documentary about con artists. The irony wasn't lost on me. Sleep came reluctantly that night, interrupted by dreams where I was back in the kitchen watching Brooke cough and Mom stare at me with accusatory eyes. Except in the dreams, I was holding a bottle of actual poison instead of a teacup, and everyone could see exactly what I'd done. I woke up sweating, heart pounding, and had to remind myself that real life had been far more subtle than that. The weekend passed in a strange fog. I cleaned my apartment with unusual intensity, scrubbing every surface like I could erase the last few days through sheer effort. I organized my closet by color. I finally dealt with the pile of mail that had been accumulating on my kitchen table for weeks. Anything to avoid thinking about what I'd done and what it meant about who I was. Jennifer noticed something had changed. "You seem different," she said Tuesday afternoon, perching on the edge of my cubicle with her usual coffee. "Good different. More present." "I cut off my family," I said. Even I was surprised by the blunt honesty. Her eyebrows shot up. "Completely." "They forgot my birthday again," I told her, minimizing a spreadsheet. "Among other things. Turns out I don't have to keep people in my life who treat me like an afterthought." Jennifer took a slow sip. "Damn. Good for you, Annie. That takes guts." "Does it?" I asked softly. She leaned back. "My mom used to do similar stuff. Not the birthday thing, but the favoritism. My brother could do no wrong, I could do nothing right. Messed me up for years. Until my therapist asked why I kept showing up to events where I wasn't wanted." "What did you say?" I said, "Because they're my family." And she said, "So what?" "Family is supposed to add to your life, not drain it." Jennifer offered a sad smile. Changed my whole perspective. I still see them sometimes, but on my terms. And I stopped trying to win approval I was never going to get. Her words settled over me like a blanket. Permission I didn't know I needed. "Does it get easier?" I asked. "Yes and no. You stop expecting them to change. That part gets easier. But you also have to grieve the family you wished you had. That part sucks." She tossed her empty cup into the trash. "But eventually, the freedom is worth the grief." I thought about that for the rest of the day. Grief for a family that never existed. It felt melodramatic, but it was accurate. I'd spent 3 decades hoping my parents would suddenly notice me, value me the way they valued Brooke. Finally see Annie. They never would. They never could. Because the problem wasn't me. It was them. They'd built an entire family structure around one daughter being the star and the other being the understudy. Changing that would require them to acknowledge their own failures. And people like my mother didn't do that. Wednesday brought another call from Dad's phone. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won out. "Hello? It's your father." His voice was tight. "We need to talk about this situation." "Which situation?" I asked. "Don't be difficult, Annie. You know what I'm talking about." Dad cleared his throat. "Your mother is very upset. Brooke is upset. The whole family is in an uproar about the tea, about your behavior, about the way you've handled things." His voice took on the stern quality he used when I was a child and had done something wrong, which admittedly was rare. I'd been the good daughter, the easy one. "You owe your sister and your mother apologies," he added. "Apologies for what, specifically?" I asked as calmly as I could. "For deliberately causing harm, for being cruel, for I drank tea, Dad. Brooke offered it to me. Those are the facts. Your mother says you knew what was in it." "How would I have known?" I asked. "Did she tell me she put laxatives in Brooke's tea?" Because I don't remember that part of the conversation. I kept my voice level. If she did mention it, maybe I just forgot. You know how things slip people's minds sometimes. Like birthdays. Silence. Long silence. "That's what this is about," he said finally. "My birthday. Among other things. You're 32 years old, Annie. You're too old to throw tantrums about birthday parties. And yet, I replied, Brooke warranted a trip to Paris at 27. That's different. How? I asked. Explain to me how it's different. He didn't answer. So I asked something else. Dad, when's my birthday? Silence. What's my job title? Silence again. What's my favorite color? My favorite food? What do I do on weekends? My voice cracked, but I pushed through the fracture. You don't know any of it, I whispered. Neither does Mom. Neither does Brooke. I'm a stranger living in your peripheral vision, and you're all angry at me for finally stepping out of the shadows. You're being unfair, he said, but there was no conviction in it. Goodbye, Dad. I hung up before he could respond. Before the weight of everything I just said could crush me. The phone rang again immediately. I blocked his number. Then Mom's. Then Brooke's real number. One by one, I went through my contacts and removed anyone who had been in that stupid family group chat. Cousins I barely knew. Aunts who only called on holidays. Uncles who couldn't pick me out of a lineup. When I finished, my contact list had shrunk by 2/3. It should have felt lonely. Instead, it felt clean. My phone rang at 10 o'clock. Mom again. I let it go to voicemail. She called back immediately. Voicemail again. The third time I answered. What? We need to talk about what happened today, she said, voice tight. You and I asked. You can't just, she stopped. Started over. What you did was cruel. What I did, I said, was drink tea I was offered. That's all. You know that's not Mom. I don't know anything except that you drugged Brooke without her consent, and now you're mad at me because I accidentally drank it instead. I took a breath. If you want to talk about cruelty, we can start with the fact that you forgot my birthday to plan Brooke's vacation. We can discuss how you've spent 3 decades making it clear which daughter matters. We can examine every missed recital, every forgotten graduation, every time you chose her over me without a second thought. My voice stayed calm. Too calm. Sharp calm. Or, I said, we can agree that I drank some tea and move on. She didn't respond. The silence stretched. I didn't forget on purpose, she said finally, quietly. Your birthday just slips my mind sometimes. Brooke's never does. That's not fair. Life isn't fair, Mom. You taught me that every single day of my childhood. She began crying. Soft, hiccuping sobs designed to make me feel guilty, to make me fold. 10 years ago, it would have worked. 5 years ago, maybe. Now? Are you coming to Dad's retirement party next month? She asked weakly. Will you remember to invite me? I asked. Or should I just show up and hope there's room? That's not, she caught herself. Yes, Annie. You're invited. Of course, you're invited. Then I'll be there, I said. And hung up. The next few weeks passed in a strange kind of peace. Brooke didn't call. Mom texted occasionally, timid, overly polite messages that I responded to with brief, neutral replies. Dad reached out once to see if I was okay, which was more concern than he'd shown in years. I answered, I'm fine. He seemed relieved not to dig deeper. Work continued. Jennifer brought more cupcakes. I processed claims. Life moved forward because that's what life does. But something had shifted inside me. I noticed it in the way I walked, my head a little higher on the subway. In the way I didn't apologize when someone bumped into me for once. In the way I started looking at new apartments online, places with actual furniture, maybe a second bedroom for a hobby or an office or just space to breathe. I'd spent 32 years being small, quiet, understanding. Being the daughter who didn't make waves. Being fine with being forgotten. I wasn't fine anymore. And I wasn't sorry. Dad's retirement party arrived on a Saturday in mid-April. Mom had rented a hall, hired a caterer, invited everyone from Dad's office, plus extended family I'd forgotten existed. I wore a navy dress and arrived exactly on time. Brooke stood near the punch bowl, holding court with a cluster of cousins. She saw me enter, and her expression flickered, something between irritation and exhaustion. I gave her a small wave. She did not wave back. Mom intercepted me before I made it 5 feet inside. You came, she said, straightening my sleeve unnecessarily. I said I would. Yes. Well. She smoothed her skirt. I'm glad. Your father will be happy to see you. Will he recognize me? I asked lightly. The barb hit its mark. Mom flinched. That's unfair, Annie. Is it? I asked calmly. I looked around at the decorations. Elegant, tasteful, expensive. This is a beautiful party, I said. Dad's lucky to have someone who remembers his important moments. Don't, she whispered. Please don't make a scene. I won't, I promised. And I meant it. This wasn't my moment. I'd already made my point. Where's Dad? I asked. She gestured toward a group of men near the bar. I wove through the crowd toward my father. He looked older, softer around the edges. Retirement suited him. Dad, I said. Congratulations. He turned. His face broke into genuine surprise. Annie, you made it. The fact that my presence shocked him said everything. Of course, I said. Wouldn't miss it. He hugged me, brief, awkward, then stepped back. How's the insurance business? He asked. Stable, I said. Not exciting, but stable. Stability is underrated, he replied, already turning back to his colleagues. Of course. I drifted to a quiet corner and watched the party unfold. Brooke laughing loudly. Mom flitting around like a frantic hummingbird. Dad accepting congratulations like he'd been waiting his whole life to retire. Nobody approached me. Nobody asked how I was doing. Nobody even looked my way for more than a second. I was as invisible as ever. Except now I saw it clearly. This was my family. This was the role they'd chosen for me, and this was all they were ever going to give me. And for the first time, the realization didn't hurt. It felt like freedom. I stayed for exactly 90 minutes, long enough to avoid seeming bitter, but short enough to not waste my entire Saturday. I congratulated Dad once more, kissed Mom's cheek, and left without saying goodbye to Brooke. The evening stretched ahead of me, empty and full of possibility. I drove home slowly, windows down, letting the spring air rush through my car. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. Wine night at my place if you want to come. No pressure. I'd never been to Jennifer's house. Never accepted any of her casual invitations to happy hour or weekend brunches. Always too busy, too tired, or whatever excuse I could manufacture to avoid connection. I'd love to, I texted back. What should I bring? Her response came immediately, enthusiastic, peppered with exclamation points. She sent her address and a string of wine glass emojis. It was silly and warm and more genuine than anything my family had offered in years. I stopped at a wine shop and picked up 2 bottles of red, splurged a little. Why not? Jennifer's apartment was small and cluttered in the best way, full of plants and books and pictures of people who genuinely seemed to like each other. 3 other women from the office were already there, laughing about something I'd missed. They welcomed me easily, poured me a generous glass, made space for me on the couch. We were just talking about the worst dates we've ever been on, Jennifer explained. Sarah went out with a guy who brought his mother, someone added. She sat between us at the movie theater. Sarah said, shaking her head. Made commentary the whole time. Everyone laughed, and I found myself laughing too, sharing my own disastrous dating stories from years ago when I still bothered trying. The conversation drifted easily from dating to jobs to families to dreams to everything and nothing. Nobody forgot I was there. Nobody treated me like an afterthought. Nobody labeled me as the quiet one or the responsible one or the boring one. It was new and wonderful and warm in a way I didn't know warmth could feel. Around midnight, buzzed on wine and belonging, I pulled out my phone and blocked my mother's number. Then Brooke's. Not out of anger, not anymore. But out of simple, undeniable recognition. These people, my family, drained me. These people, Jennifer, Sarah, and the others, they added something. I was done being drained. Jennifer drove me home because I'd had too much wine to drive safely. You okay, Annie? She asked as I fumbled with my keys. Yeah, I said honestly. I really am. Good, she smiled. You seem lighter tonight. Lighter? Yeah. Like you finally put something down that you've been carrying for a really long time. I paused, then nodded. That was exactly what it felt like. I went inside and looked around my temporary apartment, the one that had somehow become permanent. Tomorrow, I'd start apartment hunting. Next week, I'd update my resume. Next month, I'd figure out what I actually wanted to do with my life instead of what I thought I should do. My reflection stared back at me from the darkened window. And this time, I recognized her. Saw her clearly. A woman who had learned to be invisible. A woman who had decided to become visible again. A woman who had swapped cups with her sister and walked away without an apology. A woman who was done being fine. The tea had been chamomile with honey and something bitter underneath. The bitterness wasn't the laxatives. It was years of neglect crystallized into liquid form. And I'd made my mother drink it by proxy. Made her watch her golden daughter suffer the consequences of her own poisoned attention. Was it revenge? Maybe. Was it justice? Probably not. Was it satisfying? Absolutely. I poured myself a glass of water from the tap and raised it in a silent toast. To forgotten birthdays. To swapped cups. To finally choosing myself. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. It took me a moment to realize it was Mom, texting from Dad's phone. Please unblock me. We need to talk. I deleted the message and went to bed. Some conversations aren't worth having. Some relationships aren't worth saving. Some families are better loved from a distance. Or not at all. I'd spent 32 years being the daughter they wanted, quiet, understanding, invisible. Tomorrow, I'd start being the woman I actually was, loud, unforgiving, impossible to ignore. The cup of tea sat empty on my counter, a small monument to the moment everything changed. I rinsed it out and put it away, washing the bitterness down the drain where it belonged. Then I slept better than I had in years.